A big part of constructed awareness is teaching people how to connect with physical sensations. And I was in a training last week and an attendee asked me, what do I do if a client asks me why is it important to connect with sensations? And I answered by saying that constructed awareness teaches that reality is constructed by 3 building blocks. The building blocks are thoughts, sensations, and external sense perceptions. And people tend to rely more on one building block more than the other 2. Now, imagine a reality where you were disconnected from a part or parts of your reality. Like, wouldn't that be a pretty limiting existence? Unfortunately, that is the case for most people in American society because the majority of the people that I see, they tend to be disconnected from their physical bodies. They don't get the clues from their bodies that let them know things like if someone's crossing a boundary or if they want to do something or not. So to illustrate why this is important, I like to use something called a noise gate. Now, noise gate is a tool that audio engineers use. And I was a music producer and audio engineer before I became a counselor. So let me show you here. So noise gate is a simple tool that has a knob and it has a threshold that knob adjusts. So you could turn this knob and it would raise or lower this threshold. Now imagine you wanted to give a presentation and you wanted to record the audio of that talk, but the room that you're in has a lot of like static noise, AC noise, and you don't want that on the recording. Well, noise gate could fix that problem. Imagine that this squiggly line here is that audio signal that you hear in the room that you don't want on the recording. Notice it's below the threshold, so everything below that gets muted, so we don't hear that. But when you speak, your voice is loud enough, and the audio signal goes above the threshold, so that audio comes through on the recording. But then whenever you stop talking, all of that signal gets cut again. So the only thing you hear on the recording is your voice. Now imagine your nervous system has the same built-in function. We'll call it a sensation gate. Because if you felt every nerve ending on your body, it would be a pretty miserable existence. So luckily, our nervous systems have a threshold. Everything below the threshold you don't feel, everything above you do feel. Well, most folks in our society have a threshold that's set really high. Imagine this is like an 8 out of 10. So you're going through your day and activation's building and building and building, but you don't notice it because it's below the threshold. But let's say that activation gets high enough or all of a sudden it crosses the threshold and you feel it. Now, if you don't feel anything until it gets to an 8, that's really hard because it's like you don't really notice your body unless you're experiencing intense physical pleasure or pain. And it's really hard to work with a sensation that's an 8 out of 10. At that point, there's not many like exercises you can do. You kind of have to just ride it out. So it feels like the sensation's like coming out of nowhere. It's not coming out of nowhere. It's been building. Your threshold's just set too high. So through this somatic work that we do with CA, we're trying to lower that threshold to say like a 3 out of 10, where you notice it before it's way up here. Because if you notice that irritation or whatever it is building at the lower level, it's so much easier to work with it here than it is here. And as you expand your awareness of your body, you begin to just notice more of those cues, your body letting you know what you want. You begin to learn more about yourself. You recognize your feelings, therefore you learn to communicate them in new ways. So if this sounds useful, something that you're interested in, I'd like to invite you to check out constructedawareness.com. You can leave a question there or in the comments. Take care.